And then we have this, a presentation by two Brazilian researchers into an incident which allegedly took place on the 20th of January in Varginha this year. And they were showing these photographs and slides. Now, we'd already spent 2 or 3 days talking with researchers and people who were there, that is Stanton T. Friedman, John Carpenter and myself, to discover as much as we could about this extraordinary incident. I can tell you that the two gave a very, very polished presentation on that stage, and that's the video. So let's get back to the slides and just very quickly take you through this sequence. The story itself is not so straightforward in that there had been a build-up of activity in and around the Varginha district prior to that incident on January the 20th. It is as detailed and laid out as best I can in the current magazine. I was literally having stuff translated for me 15 minutes before I flew out of Curitiba and on to Sao Paulo for the return trip. But I think the information is there, and let's just take you through a few of the personalities. This is Paccaccini, Rodrigo Paccaccini, I believe his first name, who I photographed in John Carpenter's hotel room. Next door to me there was Stanton Friedman, and this was at the start of a 2-hour interview. We got it all on tape, in which he gave us even more details about this extraordinary case that had occurred in Varginha. Gentleman in the red sweater is Aurelina Augusta, and to the right, Mr. Eurico de Freitas. And that little girl is the gentleman in the red sweater's daughter, who saw this UFO just a few days before the main incident. Now, in the red sweater again, Aurelina Augusta, and to the right, Mr. Eurico de Freitas. Now, this is a couple who were woken up in the early hours when their horses were obviously panicking. They went out and they saw what the lady here described as a flying submarine. This cigar-shaped object traveling across the crops. They both saw it, and the dogs were barking a fair old bit. And the description tied in exactly with that drawn by that little girl a week or so previously. Now, the gentleman in the center of the photograph here is a famous Brazilian journalist, Gualat de Andrada, speaking with the farmer and Aurelina. And on the right, there's our friend who you saw a picture of earlier, Rodrigues Paccaccini. I did get it right. Here they are again, ordinary farming couple with a couple of their dogs. 20th of January. A creature is spotted. A strange creature. Down there in the woodland. This is looking down on the site. And this is the same spot where people saw this creature from. This is number 3 Switzerland Street in the Jardim André district of Varginha, and just to the left of there is where fire trucks from the city fire department and the military were parked. Again, this is looking down at the side of this first encounter. Gentleman on the left in the white shirt is Franco Rodrigues, and Claudia Cova is there on the right. In the distance, that's a colleague standing more or less where this first creature was seen. Again, you can see the steepness of this slope looking up to where the trucks were parked. And this is, the Brazilians love to use artist impressions for all of their reports, and this is exactly what happened, according to eyewitness testimony. The fire officials you see are called out for any kind of strange animals and dangerous creatures throughout Brazil. I mean, my God, they have all kinds of weird and wonderful creatures out there. A few of them I managed to see myself in a local zoo, which is right opposite the the venue where we held a conference. This strange creature's seen. So the firemen climb down this steep slope, approach, and they throw nets over it, and it's carried up the brow. They place it into a wooden box, the military arrive, the military take it away. Those military, incidentally, are from the Escola de Sargentos de Armas, ESA, the local militia. This is the headquarters, a very dark picture, I'm afraid, of the Varginha City Fire Department, Corpo de Bombeiros de Varginha. Difficult words, I know, but I'm sure if the Brazilians get a tape of this, they'll appreciate it. Not if I get any of their names wrong. Again, a darkened image, but this is the rear of number 76, Bonavento Braspeira Street, where the second creature was spotted at 3:30 p.m. on 20th of January. Second creature in the afternoon. Well, calls placed about 8:30 in the morning. The Varginha City Fire Department come and get the first creature at 10 o'clock that Saturday morning. Everything's then rosy and quiet in the garden, so to speak, and another call comes in. 3:30 p.m., 20th of January, 1996. And this is the exact spot where this creature was seen crouching very, very close to the building. And if you look very, very carefully, you can see a Brazilian researcher in this picture adopting that crouched position just there. Battery's failing on the old laser, never mind. And these are the three girls who saw it. Liliana Fatima Silva on the left, Valkyria Fatima Silva in the middle, both sisters, and Katia Andrada Zavia point to the precise location where they saw the creature. They saw it, and they ran like hell, thinking it was the devil, to their mother. And that's an artist's impression of this creature. 3 raised humps, brilliant red eyes, arteries, veins that were all over its body, but more pronounced at the back, and it had a kind of a brown, oily smell. This is the mother and the 2 daughters at a press conference. And here, Obriara Franco Rodriguez, one of the researchers, holds up a drawing of the creatures made by Liliana Fatima. And you can see the 2 eyes and the 3 raised humps. Guys, I'm going to have to ask you to press the forward on the slides, I'm afraid, because the battery looks like it's gone in this remote control. I'll keep trying. Here's a close-up of the drawing made by Liliana. Seem to have got it now. Now, they held public meetings immediately after this incident, and members of the public and other eyewitnesses attended the press conferences that were called as well. Rodriguez Pacacini is seated on the left. Now, all of these people who attended here saw what was going on. Every one of them. They all had something to say. Well, we saw the fire truck. Well, we saw the military. We saw them throw the nets over. We saw the kids throwing stones at the second creature. They were laughing. They were throwing stones at the goddamn thing. You know, I mean, it was just unbelievable. It's the kind of stuff, this was, I mean, Rodriguez speaks perfect English, and he was telling it just as I'm telling it to yourselves. Some idea of the media attention in January of this year, shortly after the incident. Did you see any film clips, news images, stories coming out of Brazil in January, February this year? No, I didn't either. Next slide, please. Here's Harvard professor of psychiatry John Mack, who was called down by 2 medical colleagues who were alerted to this incident. And he said, if these girls are making this up, then I will tear up my psychiatry qualifications and diploma and burn them and walk out. Next slide, please. Here's a team photograph. And guess who's not looking at the camera when the picture's taken, but decides to read a magazine himself? Instead, John Mack. And the next slide, please. What happened to the second creature, we're pretty sure of. What happened to the first, nobody knows for certain. The second creature, the one that was captured at 3:30, for some reason the military decided to take it to the front entrance of Varginha's regional hospital. The front entrance, ladies and gentlemen. And that's a picture of the regional hospital in Varginha. No wonder they've accumulated over 60 witnesses, eyewitnesses, to this particular incident. Then on Monday, the 22nd of January, a convoy of trucks parked here on this very road spot between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock opposite Humanitas Hospital. Why Humanitas Hospital? Why not the regional hospital in Varginha? That's because the doctors at Varginha looked at the creature in that regional hospital and said, we can't treat this. We're not qualified. We don't have the equipment. So they took it out and they went to Humanitas Hospital. This is the story. Here's one of the researchers, Eduardo Pascador, outside the side entrance to Humanitas Hospital, where a truck drove in to retrieve the second creature and deliver it to the military school. That's the ESA, Escola de Sargentos de Armas. And this is an artist's impression of the scene inside. Now, if you look at the magazine, you will see that we have identified every single one of those military people present. Their names, their ranks, they're all known. There are at least 7 interviews on camera with some of these people who were present. And all of that information has yet to go out. The guy, incidentally, who videotaped all of this scene for the military was identified as a Sergeant Pedrosa of S2 Military Intelligence. The military truck was then seen by nurses and doctors and even people working in the catering department parking up to the hospital doorway to remove this second creature. And then at 4 o'clock on the morning of Tuesday the 23rd of January, a convoy of military trucks and private vehicles left Varginha for the Escola Preparatoria de Cadets em Campinas. That's the Army Cadet School at Campinas. Not predominantly cadets, it's one of Brazil's biggest military bases. I believe, if memory serves me right, I think I've said about 350 kilometers away. Even the detail of the front truck there on that convoy was noticed by people. You know, it was a Volkswagen van. And this is General Colio Lima, commandant of that Cadets em Campinas, and the man who has ordered a massive security clampdown. Rodrigues Paccaccini, the principal investigator, for sure, has to walk around now with a bulletproof vest around him. If anybody utters his name in public, that is the military, and they're given an immediate 10-day detention. He is not a pretty man. I mean, look at him. You know, I mean, it's a hell of a country. I mean, it really is. It's. I took Christine with me, and she was pretty frightened, to be honest with you, when we got into Curitiba. Our plane had been delayed. Nobody was there to meet us. Nobody spoke English, and the military are everywhere. I mean, they just handle Tommy guns and machine guns and pistols like you wouldn't believe. You know, I fully expected somebody to start twirling a pistol around their finger at one point. And the other disturbing feature, which we saw out there, was that everywhere, on every street corner, you know, there's just thousands and thousands of posters of missing people, and of course, kids. And it was a pretty harrowing time at different moments on that visit. 3 of the guys, researchers, who deserve a mention: Obiaro Franco Rodrigues on the left, Edison Jr. in the center, and he's alongside on the right, Luis Petri, who's done more than most. He's a TV journalist. He works on a program called Fantástico in Brazil to get this information out. That is actually a shot, a still frame from a video of one of the interviews that Rodrigues Paccaccini did with one of the key military witnesses to this particular incident. And then, after it had seemingly all died down, here we had this Mrs. Teresino Gallo-Cleph, who, in April of this year, 3 months after this main event, April the 21st, saw this. Here's a drawing held up by researcher Claudia Covo, made by Mrs. Cleph, of this creature that she saw on the 21st of April. Now you can just make out the Brazilian researcher standing there, and at the back of this restaurant area here, she just nipped out for a cigarette. This is where she observed the creature. This is at the rear of Jardim Zoológico de Varginha. That's the Varginha Zoo Gardens restaurant. And then you had things like this. I mean, UFO researchers are used to ringing up people. Brazilians go some way beyond that. They literally printed thousands of these leaflets, and this actually says, if you have some information about this case, talk with us. Obrigado. Thank you. And they were shoving them in doorways, they were putting them up on walls, and of course people were ringing the number. Yes, we've seen this. But think back to what Mrs. Cleph saw. Here we are. Incident happens on the 20th of January, and we go through February, we go through March, we're into April, back end, and she sees another creature. And of course the questions then that were asked were, are there more creatures like this in and around the area that haven't yet been found, or has somebody come back looking for lost friends? Who knows for sure? This is the front cover of a Style magazine, and it actually says The Mystery of the Brazilian E.T. Now this was published on the 22nd of May 1996, and still word has to carry about the significance of this incident, which I literally have just scraped the surface of in this presentation. It's an important case in my opinion, and it's something that is shared, I believe, by Stanton as well as John Carpenter, in that the quality of the witnesses and the sheer numbers of the witnesses left a deep impression on all three of us. We were extremely impressed by the fact that the Brazilian investigators who went out there and literally knocked on doors did so immediately after this thing happened. It's not as if we're looking at another Roswell incident. We don't know for sure. Certainly there are witnesses who claim to have seen trucks coming out of Varginha with strange-looking wreckage on the back. They're hoping that there are some souvenir hunters out there. Certainly there is evidence that the Americans that were there in a very, very big way, some of which I've touched upon in the magazine. They've taken a real blatting of these researchers from armchair ufologists. I hate to use that word ufologist at the end of armchair. People who haven't traveled there, who have never met Paccaccini and all these other guys, wonderful men and women, has to be said, who've bent over backwards to literally share every snippet of information that they possibly could. And their message that was given to me, to Stanton, and to John, they asked to pass on to you. Please believe us. We are not amateurs. We go out in the field, and they stress this point again and again and again. We are field researchers. They have the interviews. They have a hell of a story to tell, and I'm proud and privileged to be able to pass that story on through the pages of our magazine and, of course, here at this conference today. And I really, really hope, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed, that it won't be too long before we're able to bring some of these people across from Brazil and stand them here and let them tell you their story.